Recently, I've really been annoyed by a pet peeve, as you do, and I wanted to get it off my chest because it's one of these bigger pet peeves, things that you just see day after day after day that manifest themselves in a million little ways. And what it is people that are not whatsoever in touch with their dark side really tend to frustrate me. And I think it's most people these days. And fair enough, it's hard to get in touch with your dark side in like a healthy way. But the problem with not understanding your shadow, as Young called it, is that you think yourself incapable of doing evil. And so you don't retrospectively look back at things you did and take responsibility for them, or look in the present moment and realize like you're bullying someone. Because if your belief is, I'm a good person, in fact, I'm a great person, I'm definitely not one of those evil people, well, then you'll define everything you do as good. You'll say, well, that can't have been bullying. That must have been me joking around because I'm a good person, so I can't bully. Or, I bet that homeless guy like didn't really need the money, because if it was a homeless guy that really needed the money, I would have given it to him. I would have sensed it. Because I'm a good person, I can sense things like that. If you walk around thinking of yourself like that, rather than as what you really are, which is a pretty much self-involved, resource-hungry ape on this thing called Earth, pretty much obsessed with status, obsessed with self-aggrandizing, of getting ahead in your job, of not, hurting others, but we all, basically 100% of us, put ourselves above other people in every situation that we can. There are situations where we are charitable, and there are people that reach out hands to help others and try to, say, include someone, or reach out to people that are being ostracized or excluded. But how often does that really happen? You probably know how little it happens because you remember it. If like in high school, you knew someone that like always worked hard to include people, you remember it because it was so rare. So I would imagine that that person is in touch with their dark side. The person that reaches out to the excluded, lonely person knows both what it feels like to be lonely, but also that like they're realistic about, yeah, like it's not natural that we would include them. Naturally, I want to keep them out there on the outside because that's human nature. The excluded person we assume is dangerous and so should continue to be excluded. That's just how we work. We're tribal creatures. But the person that knows that and wants to resist that part of human nature, well, what they're knowledgeable about is the human dark side as it's manifested in themselves. But most people just have no idea about how evil they are. I mean, the amount of times in my adult life, because as children we're kind of forced to apologize. As children, I think we're better about this because that dark side is really on the outside. Like, a lot of parents talk about this. Like, you'll just walk in and your kid will be like killing an insect for no reason. Like, they just do evil stuff randomly, and so you can kind of just directly attack it, tell them don't do that. But once you reach adulthood, like, how often are you really ever apologized to? How often does anyone say, yeah, man, what I did was really messed up, and then not justify it, not do the thing where, oh, but like, this circumstance made me do it, not justify it at all, but an apology like, I did something selfish because I was looking after my own interests over yours. And for doing that, for letting that part of me act instead of the good part of me, I'm sorry. Apologies like that do not come very often. And that's, again, because most modern people just have no idea that they're capable of doing something bad. I remember this manifested a lot, like whenever in school you learned about some horrible atrocity like the Holocaust or slavery, everyone is like, well, I wouldn't have been the Nazi, I wouldn't have been the slave owner. When in fact, of course you would have. And really, I always thought back then that like the only people that could claim that in good conscience are like vegans, because if you're not on the edge of like extreme like moralizing now, like a vegan is, whether you think vegans are right or wrong, why do you think you would have been that before? If you think vegans are annoying, always yelling about meat is murder, why do you, and I'm not vegan at all, just so you know, why do you think that like you would have been an annoying moralizer going against what 99% of people are doing back in the 1800s? You wouldn't have. If you're not going to put your neck out now, you wouldn't have put your neck out back then. And that doesn't mean you're evil. It just means that you're human, but you need to accept that. But like, you're probably not awake to like most moral issues going on in the world. You're probably mistreating lots of people around you. I mean, the most common example of it is like every friend group has one person that's kind of lower status and that other people kind of like pick at, hopefully good naturedly, but a lot of the times not. Like, there's obviously a line. I personally think, because of how humans are, like in a large group, someone kind of has to sort of be like at the bottom to a degree. But there's a difference between that kind of natural, just the way people settle, and like mistreating that person aggressively. And I think in most like friend groups, that person gets mistreated, probably by you, or at least you don't stand up and stop it. So all that is to say that most people don't accept that about themselves. And I think recently, like with the popularity of Game of Thrones, our craving for people that know their dark side has kind of gone in a weird direction, where what we love now, not are good people, but bad people who at least can say, yeah, I'm bad. Yeah, I do what I want. Yeah, I go after what I want. You kind of see this like kind of persona in some musicians and rappers too, where we like a bad person that at least recognizes that they're bad, because in a sense they're trustworthy. Whereas we know that most of us are not like that. We're half, 50% bad people who utterly deny that that part of us exists. And frankly, I think that's really annoying. That's all.